let's do this thing. Let's start it. Welcome to the first football show of the week. This is James Skrmetta's Wondrous Football Show. Today we have a lot to go over, man. A lot to go. We're going to break down every single game. We're going to do the power rankings. We're going to talk about the coaches being fined for the mask policy. We're going to do it all. Talk about the injuries. So let's start the show. What a week. So the NFL first week, we have a lot of questions were asked in week one. The questions were, how the hell are people going to play with no preseason? How the hell are people going to play with nothing? No preseason, no OTAs, no training camps, nothing. And we had a lot of new coaches in new places, new players in new places, new teams, new organizational structure as far as the Panthers with new owners, new coaches, and whatnot. So the first week was relatively smooth. I would say the first week looked a lot like the NFL, right? The second week was a little bit different, and mostly in the injuries. So if we look at the injuries right now, this has to be the biggest story. I think it was 7 ACLs were torn in week 2. Notable injuries: Nick Bosa, ACL. Solomon Thomas was carted off the field. Let's see, we got Jimmy Garoppolo has an ankle problem. Raheem Mostert left the game. Saquon Barkley tore his ACL. Sterling Shepard was taken out of the game. Justin Herbert started the game in Los Angeles because Tyrod Taylor sat out due to a chest injury. Christian McCaffrey has a high ankle sprain. He's expected to miss 4 to 6 weeks. Colts wide receiver Paris Campbell carted off the field. Malik Hooker got hurt. Devontae Adams suffered a hamstring injury. Cam Akers, he was hurt. Drew Lock is strained his rotator cuff. He's out for a few weeks. Let's see if I'm missing any. And that about Bruce Irvin tore his ACL for the Seahawks. Brandon Scherf for Washington, their guard, he sprained his MCL. So I mean, there was a lot of injuries, and I think the knee-jerk reaction here is obviously, well, they're injuring themselves because of a lack of training, a lack of training camp or a lack of preseason. And I'm no doctor, but I would agree that it seems like that makes sense. These are, and I think it's a compounded issue. I think what we're seeing, we talked about this in the preseason, but what you're seeing is these guys have had a very weird offseason. This isn't an offseason where they went to their normal workouts. They went to their normal places. They probably had to work out in solitude. They may have had to work out differently. They certainly didn't have live game time. They certainly weren't playing at 100%. And there was no ramp up to that. There was no time for them to ramp up from 0 to 100% playing in the NFL. Playing in the NFL is as hard physically as it gets in sports. And so I think from going so quickly to the top of their abilities, I think that's why you're seeing all of this. Now, that's just me guessing. I don't know. I mean, you're talking about Saquon Barkley, Christian McCaffrey. Looks like 2 of the most physically fit, taking care of their bodies, specifically their legs, best conditioned. I'm sure these 2 are the picture of health of what you would want in the NFL. And the fact that they are getting hurt says a lot. Now, I think there's nothing that the NFL can do. I mean, this is kind of like they made their bed, they got to lay in it. If they were going to go with no training camp, no preseason, they had to expect injuries. And they had to expect this may be a thing. But the players wanted to play, and this is where we're at. So it's obviously awful to see the injuries. And I'm not too surprised to see the injuries, but it is a big deal, and it's much bigger of a deal than just your fantasy team. I mean, you're talking about Saquon Barkley or Christian McCaffrey, probably the 2 best running backs in the NFL, or 2 of the best running backs in the NFL, both in having major injuries that hamper running backs. I mean, Saquon Barkley tears an ACL, and Christian McCaffrey hurts an ankle. So this is career-threatening, not like that they're going to have to retire, but will they ever get back to where they were? I mean, I don't know. I don't think Christian McCaffrey's had to deal with an injury in his career. I know Saquon Barkley really hasn't. So what will they be like when they come back? We've seen Todd Gurley. We've seen players struggle mightily coming back from injuries, especially at running back. When you lose that step, it's not easy to get back. So I think this is something the NFL will have to monitor. I don't know what the answer is. I don't think there is an answer. The only thing I'm surprised of, and I kind of thought this would happen in the preseason, or not the preseason, but at the beginning of the year, is I thought we would see players or teams treating the first couple of games like preseason games. And what I mean by that is rotating players a lot, lightening the load. I mean, we saw Joe Burrow's throwing the ball 60 times a game. We saw Derrick Henry run it 31 times in the first week. I understand that these guys are paid to play. I understand that these guys are paid to win. But in my opinion, it seems like it's a lot to ask from, hey, we're not playing at all, to, hey, I need 31 carries of game time performance from you. So I just don't know. I don't know if the NFL teams are approaching this responsibly. And again, I don't know if they can. I don't know if they can deal with it responsibly. I mean, what can you actually ask the teams to do? Ask the teams, hey, don't have your best player on the field. Hey, monitor your best players for a few weeks. I think that's also a bit of a stretch, but I think that's why we're seeing the injuries. Like always on the show, this is a live football show, and we bring in chat, and we read chat and talk to chat throughout the entire show. So let's go to chat now. Barkley has dealt with an ankle issue like Chris McCaffrey has now. Barkley is a freak. Yeah, the high ankle sprains obviously are different, but I don't think Saquon's ever had to deal with a serious knee injury. And a lot of the times when you are a physical freak like that, injuries can be tough because it's almost like Samson or something cutting his hair. Saquon has had his legs and his athletic ability that's kind of carried him, and that's what he's known for. So what happens when you lose a little bit of that? How does he handle rehabbing? How does he handle physically not having whatever he's used to having? So we'll see what happens. I'm sure Saquon will be able to come back. I mean, if anybody can, it's him. But it's worrisome. It's absolutely worrisome for him to lose his legs. Like having to rebuild a leg and get it to where it was now. I mean, I don't. That seems like a tall order. I've never torn an ACL. I certainly don't have the legs that Saquon Barkley does. But I would feel like starting from scratch, basically, having a surgery, having a year rehab or 8-month rehab, whatever it is, I feel like that'd be pretty tough if your legs are like Saquon Barkley. But the injuries were tough. So a lot of teams are going to have to deal with a lot. I mean, the Niners lost like 4 starters. The Niners are down like 2 defensive linemen, a quarterback, a running back. They already have injuries to wide receiver. So the Niners are in a real bad spot. So let's take a look now. Let's go game by game. So let's do the actual game-by-game recap. We're going to start with last Thursday night, Bengals and Browns. So the Browns win the game, 35-30. But the story is Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow, 37 for 61 for 316 yards and 3 touchdowns. Now, I watched the entire game. I was live tweeting the game, and it gets old. I mean, it does get old because you're going to hear the same thing every single week. You're going to hear how good Joe Burrow is. And it's really something else because when I was watching Joe Burrow, I was saying, I've never seen a quarterback look like this. And when you look at the stats, it's like, well, it's not that crazy. I mean, 37 for 61, 316, 3 touchdowns, not that crazy. Even if you watch the game, you're like, well, I mean, it's just a lot of checkdowns, a lot of screens, a lot of short passes, a lot of whatever. But there's moments in the game where you see Burrow rolling out, looking downfield, evading the rush, making his reads, making his progression, making absolutely bullet-perfect throws. And those moments right there do not happen this early for a quarterback. And they certainly don't happen this early for a quarterback with no preseason, no training camp, nothing. I mean, what Joe Burrow has right now, in my lifetime, I would say that Joe Burrow is probably the most impressive rookie I may have ever seen as far as a quarterback. He looks right now like you don't like to do this. You don't like to jump on a player and say, yeah, this is a sure thing. But he looks as sure of a thing as I've ever seen. He looks as sure of a franchise quarterback as I've ever seen in the NFL. I mean, this game was a great example. And it's so interesting because he looks the best in his like 2 to 4 minute drill. He looks the best whenever he just plays. And the Bengals are forced, basically, to let him just run this kind of no-huddle offense. If it's 2 minutes left in the half, or he's marching down the field to try and win the game or tie the game, he looks incredible. He looks like he did at LSU. Now, he does have some moments where he's forcing balls, or he might be trying to do too much. Just rookie problems. But you can already see it's there. And it's so weird because franchise quarterbacks are really, really, really hard to come by, obviously. And we haven't seen one in a long time. And we've seen good quarterbacks. We've seen quarterbacks who are successful, but to have basically a Tom Brady or a Peyton Manning or something like that, even if you look at Cam Newton. Cam Newton came in, he was successful off the bat, won an MVP, went to the Super Bowl, but now he's on a different team and he was injured. And, so you could say, yeah, he was a very successful first overall pick, and I agree. But this Joe Burrow it looks like he could be that Peyton Manning, Tom Brady type player who's in Cincinnati for 10 plus years, goes to however many playoffs, and all of a sudden Cincinnati is a viable, relevant team as long as he's there. I could not be more impressed with Joe Burrow. And he was going against Baker Mayfield. I think Baker's kind of peaked. I think we know what Baker is. I think Baker's ceiling is an average quarterback. I don't think he'll ever be an MVP. I don't think he'll ever be a top 5 guy. I don't think he's a Super Bowl kind of guy. It was kind of funny because during the game, Troy Aikman was trying to give Baker a lot of credit. He was like, Baker could be Brett Favre. And I just don't see it. And I think it's funny because in that game, there was really no reason to talk about Baker because it was obvious already that Joe Burrow is better. Joe Burrow has a higher ceiling. Joe Burrow looks better right now, or looks like he has more promise right now than Mayfield ever has in his career. And Mayfield had a decent game. Mayfield had a pretty decent game. But he also made some really bad plays. At the very end of the game, the only reason the Bengals came within 5 is because Mayfield had a really bad pass in Bengals territory that led to an interception. And it was one of those passes you see Baker make all the time. And one of those passes that's like, this ain't it, Baker. This ain't it. Going back to chat. Andrew Luck is the last guy I remember being good this fast. Both have bad O-lines and making plays still. Yeah, Andrew Luck's a good example. Now, Andrew Luck is the Barry Sanders of quarterbacks. Andrew Luck, he maybe could have been that franchise guy, but injuries derailed him, and then he retired, and who the hell knows? So, but yeah, he looked good early for sure. Andrew Luck is a good shout for sure. But I'm just blown away. I really am blown away by Joe Burrow, and it's just so crazy because it's just more of the Joe Burrow story. Joe Burrow went from literally nothing, and he was not even going to get drafted. He wasn't even projected to be drafted at all going into his senior season. He goes into his senior season. All of a sudden, he has the best single season we've probably ever seen from a quarterback. I mean, comparable to the Cam Newtons and even the Johnny Manziels and those seasons. Had the greatest season in collegiate history. Wins the Heisman. Wins the national championship. Doesn't lose a game. Doesn't ever even have a bad game. And we see that. Then he goes to the NFL. Has probably the most difficult transition from college to the NFL we've ever seen, with no training camp, no preseason, nothing. Goes into Cincinnati, a team that's been completely irrelevant since Carson Palmer left. And Joe Burrow looks this good. I mean, this is like a Tom Brady thing where you sit back and you scratch your head and you say, how in the hell did this guy not play that well at Michigan? And then all of a sudden he gets to the NFL and he turns into the greatest quarterback to ever live. It's the same thing with Burrow. What happened from his junior year to his senior year? And yeah, you can say coaching, they brought in the offensive specialist, or you can say his players around him, but he has not missed a beat for now 16 months. I mean, since the first game, since they played Texas, his senior year, in week 1, he has not missed a beat, and he looks damn good in the NFL. I mean, Cincinnati knocked it out of the park. Joe Burrow, I'm excited to see what's going on here, or what the move is here. I mean, he's 0-2. It is what it is. Let's say they win 3, 4, 5 games. I really don't care. Peyton Manning, his rookie season, he had like 30 interceptions. He was terrible. But you could see it was there. And right now you can see it's there with Joe Burrow. I have a feeling every week I'm going to be waxing poetic on Twitter about how good Joe Burrow is. And I said on Twitter this week, I don't know if there is a team outside of Cleveland that would not, or I said it on Thursday night, I said I don't think there's a locker room besides Cleveland right now that wouldn't trade Baker Mayfield straight up for Joe Burrow. Everyone can see it. And there's so many teams where if you go down the list of teams, it's like, hey, would you rather have your quarterback situation or start over with Burrow? And I think a lot of teams right now would start over with Joe Burrow. Unbelievable. But the Browns do get the wins. The Browns are 1-1, 35-30 in that game. And we shall move on. Here is back to chat. All right, I'm going to homer. We made the playoffs 5 years in a row and won multiple division titles with Dalton. I'm a homer, but we had very good teams after Palmer. There's a difference, though. There's a difference between making the playoffs. There's a difference between winning divisions. There's a difference between all of that. And there's a difference between being relevant. I don't think Cincinnati has been as relevant as they are right now since Palmer. And it wasn't just Palmer. It was Chad Johnson, TJ Houshmandzadeh. It was the whole thing. But Cincinnati is a must-watch team now. Cincinnati is on people's minds. Cincinnati is an interesting team. I'm sure Joe Burrow jerseys are selling. Andy Dalton was not relevant. Andy Dalton was not selling out jerseys. Andy Dalton was not putting Cincinnati on Monday Night Football. Joe Burrow makes them a relevant team. And being a relevant franchise matters in the NFL. Being relevant matters to when free agents go somewhere. It matters to, your team's excitement levels, the coaches you can bring in. It matters with everything. I have a feeling that as long as Joe Burrow is there, Cincinnati will have primetime games. Cincinnati will be featured much more on talk shows. Cincinnati will be spoken about every single week on Fox Sports and ESPN and whatever. That is a big deal. And that can't be understated. People get wrapped up in, it's like the Texans, right? So the Texans with TJ Yates go to the playoffs, okay? And it's like, yeah, you can look back and say, hey, man, we went to the playoffs. But did they? Did it matter? Were they relevant? No. They had TJ Yates, right? So there is a difference. The Lions are a good example. The Lions under Stafford, if you go back and look at their results, the Lions have been more seasons they've been good than bad. The Lions, if you go look at Matthew Stafford's win and losses, his seasons are okay. I think they had a 12-win year, right? But how many people even know that? How many people even care? The Lions haven't been relevant. The Lions are relevant one day a year, and that's on Thanksgiving because they play every single Thanksgiving. So just because you have years of success or years of playoffs or years of 10 wins, it doesn't really matter. There is a huge difference in wins. There's a huge difference in playoffs, and there's a huge difference between being super relevant. Cincinnati is super relevant right now. Back to chat. Sure, I get that. I just meant from we made a difference to who made the playoffs and all that from a game point of view. We affected the league winning double digits games in 5 straight playoff appearances. Yeah, I mean, hey, that's what I'm saying. That's fine. That's fine. But there's just a difference. And I think now, if I was Cincinnati, I'd feel better right now about being 2-0 with Burrow and the future that you have there than the 2-0 starts to the 10-win, 11-win, 12-win seasons with Andy Dalton, if that makes sense. I think having Andy Dalton being the 3 seed and getting bounced in the second round is fine. But I think the ceiling right now, even though we've seen the results, even though 5 straight years of playoffs, even though all that stuff sounds great, I think right now the ceiling is so much higher. And we got to move on. So we'll keep going. Now we go to Sunday slates, the Giants and the Bears. The Bears somehow are 2-0. And I don't know how. I have no idea how. The Bears suck. I know they suck. You know they suck. 17-13 against the Giants. The Giants this was the first game that Daniel Jones had all of his weapons, and they all get hurt. Saquon Barkley tears his ACL. Sterling Shepard gets hurt. What are the Giants? The Giants, now the season's over. The season's over. The Giants, Saquon Barkley, they go as far as he goes. He's out. Sterling Shepard, who knows how long he'll be out. Daniel Jones is not ready right now to carry a team. It's a tough year for the Giants, and I think the Giants will if you're a Giants fan, you have to hope they just kind of tank. You have to hope they just kind of fall apart. They win 3-4 games, and you get a top 10 draft pick, and you can start over next year. That's really about it. I mean, it's a dog-eat-dog world out there, but what do you want me to say? Chicago, I don't get Chicago. I mean, I don't think Trubisky's good. I think everyone except Trubisky wants Trubisky out of Chicago, but if they're 2-0, what are you going to do? Nick Foles is waiting. I think Chicago is it's hard for me to say Chicago's a mess because they're winning games. They shouldn't have beat Detroit. They win this game by 4. I mean, it's hard for me to say Chicago's dead man walking. You know, it's hard for me to say Chicago is dead man walking as long as Trubisky's there when they're undefeated right now. So we'll see. I do not believe in Trubisky. I really don't. He has to prove me wrong. I think Matt Nagy is one of those guys who's been kind of handcuffed. He was a heralded offensive guy. He's tailored his entire offense to Trubisky. I mean, we hear stories about how he scripts the first 10 to 15 plays, and then after that, Trubisky struggles. That's been the book on the Bears. The book on the Bears are they start off well in every game because the first few series are completely scripted. And then once they get off the script, Trubisky gets worse. And you see that in a lot of Bears games. Now, it doesn't hold up against the Lions because they came back from a 23 or 26-3 deficit in the fourth. So could be a little different. I don't know, but we just don't know yet. I don't even know if Nagy's a good coach because all he's done this entire time is placate to Mitchell Trubisky. So, in my heart of hearts, even though they're 2-0, I would say the Bears are a bang average team, a 500 team. And that's about it. So they have to prove me wrong, but we'll see what happens there. Next game. What a game this was. Jesus. Falcons and Cowboys. Cowboys somehow outscore the Falcons 30-10 in the second half and win this game. It was 20-0 in the first, 29-10 at halftime, and the Cowboys win 40-39. I mean, these are two teams. Now, these are two teams that are aggravating the entire fan base of each one of them. The Falcons blow leads like it's nothing. I mean, they are the Riley Reid of the NFL. And the Cowboys can't seem to get right, but seem to get right just enough to scrape by and win games, scrape by and go 8-8, right? So let's talk about the Falcons first. The Falcons, if you're a Falcons fan, you got to be begging for them to shut the window. You got to be begging for them to close this window. You got to be begging for them to say, look, can we get Dan Quinn out of here? Can we get Matt Ryan out of here? Can we please just move on? How much longer can they do this, right? How much longer can they survive like this? This experiment, and I think this happens a lot in the NFL, where you have a coach, you have a quarterback, you have a core, and the core may at some points get you far, like the Falcons in the Super Bowl. The core may get you to playoffs. The core may win you NFC championships. The core may be good. But at a certain point, the core needs to be changed. I think the core needs to be changed in Atlanta. What is the ceiling for Atlanta now? Will they ever go back to the NFC championship game with Matt Ryan, Julio Jones, Dan Quinn? Will they ever go back? Or is that just a thing of the past? In my opinion, I think it's a thing of the past. I mean, it's brutal to watch. And the worst part about this was the onside kick. So if you didn't see the game at the very end, the Falcons are defending an onside kick from the Cowboys, and they watched the ball roll 10 yards. The Falcons looked like they were on offense. The Falcons watched the ball roll 10 yards, don't touch it, and then the second it goes over 10 yards, they try and dive on it with the Cowboy players. And the Cowboys come up with it, and the Cowboys win the game. But it's just little stupid mistakes like that. And I hate to point the finger at Dan Quinn, but that's a Dan Quinn problem. You can't have your players do that. It's the hands team. That's their only job. These are guys who their only reason on the field is because they can defend against the onside kick. And then they go out there and watch the onside kick like they're on offense. It's unbelievable. Now, the Cowboys dug themselves into a deep hole. They fumbled 4 times. They had 2 fake punts that didn't go in. They missed a 2-point conversion. But Dak Prescott, I'll tell you this, Dak Prescott did what the hell he had to do to win this game. 34 for 47, 450 yards, passing touchdown and 3 rushing touchdowns. Zeke was damn good. He ended up with 22 carries for 89 yards, but he was impressive. Dallas is so weird, man. Dallas is so weird. They're obviously the better team. The whole game, you could see it. Even whenever they were fumbling every possession. If you fumble the ball 4 times in the first half and you're only down 29-10, if you're only down, if you're still relatively in the game, I think you got to be happy with yourself. There was no reason that Dallas should have been in this game. But Atlanta kicked field goals. Dallas did what they had to do and came away with the win. This is one of those wins where it should count like it's 2 wins. It really should, because you're putting yourself so far behind the 8 ball. You're putting yourself in such a bad spot with the fumbles, their turnovers. And this is Dallas's IO. This is what they do. Or MO. I don't know what an IO is. Dallas is, every year, it's like, well, they're really good. Well, Dak Prescott's really good. Well, Ezekiel Elliott's really good. Well, they have great offensive players. And then they somehow go 8-8. I don't get it. Last year, Dallas had the best offense in the league. Yards per play. They had the best offense in the league. And they go 8-8. Like, when is Dallas going to step up and reach their potential? Are they going to reach their potential? I think it's obvious that Dak Prescott's good. I've already said that. I've already stated it when we did our quarterback rankings at the beginning of the year. It's obvious he's good. You don't win games like this and have games like Dak Prescott had without being good. But what is is it a organizational issue? Is it a coaching issue? It feels like Mike McCarthy is just doing what Jason Garrett's doing. I mean, we see this every week now at Mike McCarthy with head-scratching fake punts, head-scratching 2-point conversions, head-scratching game management, head-scratching field goals or non-field goals in week 1. I don't know. I don't think he's the guy. I mean, looking at this team, it feels like, again, they're winning in spite of their head coach, just like with Jason Garrett. They're winning in spite of what Garrett's doing. So I don't know what to do with Dallas. I tend to believe in Dallas because I think the players are good, and they do have moments like this where they show you how good they can be. But then you think back to the first half where they fumble 4 times, and it's like, well, yeah, I guess they can be good. It's like, I guess they can be good, but I guess they can also fumble 4 or 5 times. I hope the Cowboys figure it out because I think the NFL is better when the Cowboys are better. But they got to figure something out. I'll say this, though. Zeke, their main players look good. Their main players look like they're playing good. Zeke is running angry. Zeke is running strong. He's very available in the passing game. Dak looks good. It's just a question of, is this weird Kellen Moore, Mike McCarthy thing, is that actually going to happen? Like, is that going to work out? Are they what Dallas needs? Now, Dallas has some problems in the secondary. Dallas is allowing points. And they're playing Seattle next week. So Dallas has some structural issues in the secondary to figure out, and this is a passing league, so you can't go into every game with no passing defense. Book's still out on Dallas, but I believe in Dallas. I think Dallas is probably a 9-win, 10-win team somewhere in there, and I would love to see them make that jump from 8-8 to winning a little bit of these games that they should lose, like this one. So this is one of those years where maybe they drop this game. Maybe this is one of their 8 losses usually, but this year they're going to take a step and maybe a little bit above 500. What an absolute roller coaster of a game, though. Absolute roller coaster for the Cowboys fans. Next game, Lions-Packers. The Packers were everyone's darling, and we're looking at a 42-21 win for the Packers. The Lions, before the season, everyone said the Lions are ready for that next step. The Lions are ready for the move. Stafford was hurt last year, or before he was hurt, he was playing at an MVP level, gets hurt. They're relatively healthy. They shored up some problems they had in the secondary. They brought in free agents. They made some moves. And then they're 0-2. They blow a game against the Bears at home. They get dominated by the Packers. And they're in the familiar territory, being 0-2. I think the Matt Patricia thing might be over in Detroit. I think Matt Patricia, it looks to me like he's just not a head coach. And that happens. That happens where you have a great defensive mind, or you have a great offensive mind, and they try and coach the entire game, and you can see they just don't have that. And there's nothing against them. Some people are better coordinators than head coaches. So I think the Lions are really, really struggling. I think they're kind of a mess. Patricia is one of those guys. Belichick's probably the same way. Just hit my mic, sorry. Where when you're a guy like Patricia, and you have quirks, and you demand a lot out of your players, and you carry a laminated piece of paper, and you have a pencil in your ear the entire game, players buy into that when you're winning. Players don't buy into that when you're losing. Just like Nick Saban when he went to the NFL. Nick Saban has this like tyrant, very aggressive, very in-your-face attitude. He's very do what I say or get off the bus. That works with a bunch of 18, 19, 20-year-olds. It doesn't work that well with a bunch of $20 million players. It doesn't work very well with 30-year-old men who are getting paid $10 million a year. And that's why Saban struggled in the NFL. He couldn't connect with his players the same way. The players didn't buy into him. So I think Patricia deals with that with, it's hard for the players to buy into Patricia. It's hard for the players to buy into his quirks and his attitude when they lose. And he seems to be a reason why they're losing. So I think because of that, if you're looking at Detroit, you got to be thinking that organizationally they may be in a bad spot. And Stafford's getting older. They're nearing that rebuild time. I'd be kind of surprised if Patricia finished the year, to be honest. I think Patricia, unless the Lions completely turn it around, I think you're looking at Patricia having an early exit from Detroit and them trying to figure something else out while they have Matt Stafford. As far as the Packers, though, it looks like they figured it out. I mean, it looks like the Packers have it going on. The Packers beat the holy hell out of the Lions here. They beat the holy hell out of the Vikings. They're 2-0. They're 2-0 in the division. Aaron Rodgers is playing about as good as he can play. Devontae Adams came up with a injury. Aaron Jones had 18 carries for 168 yards, 2 touchdowns on the ground, 4 receptions for 68 yards and a touchdown in the air. So Aaron Jones did his damn thing. But Devontae Adams going out certainly hurts. They have the Saints next week, which should be interesting for the Saints. But the Packers look good, and this was the question. The question was, how will Rodgers play after kind of a shaky offseason? Looks like he's playing pretty well. Is this Aaron Rodgers playing with a chip on his shoulder? Is this Aaron Rodgers playing angry? Or is this Aaron Rodgers just saying, you know what? I got to take what I can take. It's my team, and I'm going to show you why it's my team. The Packers could be one of those teams where if I was in the front office of Green Bay, I'd be looking at this team and saying, all right, we have a legit shot here to go to the Super Bowl. We have a legit shot to get another ring. Do they make a move for a wide receiver? Do they make a move for a tight end? Do they make a move for someone to help Aaron Rodgers? Great idea from my chat earlier this week, but what about Julio Jones? I don't know if they could even go get him, but what about a player like Julio Jones who's just on an island in Atlanta, probably wants to get out and win? Could you imagine if the Packers made a move and went and got Julio Jones? Would that alone completely make up for 10 years or whatever of bad drafting with Aaron Rodgers? I think so. I think if you gave Aaron Rodgers Julio, I think he'd say, all right, cool. We're good. We're cool. I accept your apology for Jordan Love, and I'm going to play my ass off and try and win a Super Bowl. Thank you very much. We could see Green Bay make a move like that. We could see Green Bay cash in all their chips and say, all right, we got it. We're here. If you think we're ready to win, we obviously have the team. Rodgers is on board. Rodgers isn't pouting. He's playing well. Let's go all in. And if I'm in Green Bay and if I'm the Green Bay fans, that's 100% what I'd want to do. I mean, the Packers right now, and we'll talk about it later on in the top 10, but they're one of the teams to beat in the NFC. The rest of the NFC looks like shit. I mean, you got the Seahawks, you got the Packers right now. The Niners are completely falling apart. The Saints are falling apart. Green Bay was a team that won 13 games last year, and people are saying maybe they weren't a 13-win team. But right now, they look like they're right back on pace. So, a lot of promise in Green Bay. It'll be interesting to see if they do something with their roster moving forward. Next game, Jaguars Titans. This game got close at the end. So, Titans win a close one, 33-30. And the Jaguars came back. They scored 20 points in the second half. Outscored the Titans 20-9 in the second half to make this thing close. And the Jags had a good game from Ryan Tannehill. Ryan Tannehill had himself a game. Gardner Minshew, this is a player, we talked about this last week. Gardner Minshew is a guy who, when you're losing, you want Gardner Minshew because he's going to keep playing. He's a good backdoor cover, good comeback player because to him, it's just the same. He's just slinging it around. He's just, pitch and catch. That's the teams you want to back when you're down. Let's take a look at the box score here. So Gardner Minshew is 30 for 45 for 339, 2 touchdowns, 3 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Tannehill, 18 for 24, 239, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions. Derrick Henry, 25 carries for 84 yards. So that's 56 carries in 2 weeks for Derrick Henry. That's tough. That's tough sledding right there. Only averaged 3.4 yards a carry. They're still waiting for him to get to heat up a little bit there. On the other side, James Robinson from Jacksonville, 16 carries for 102 yards. So good game here. Again, Jacksonville, they're fighting. They're fighting. And that's what you want. That's certainly what you want if you're Jacksonville. You want a team who's just going to go out there and fight. You want a team that's not going to give up. I think this team, they got their first win in week 1 in a comeback situation. And this is a team that could have tanked. This is a team that looked like they were tanking. And the fact that they said, we're not tanking, or the players said, we're not tanking, we're not taking a week off, we're playing hard, that's good to see. And Minshew is playing for his job. No doubt about it. He's got some detractors, people like his mustache, but on the field, what is Minshew? We're looking at chat here. Minshew's interceptions were late there, like desperate late. So he was just like slinging it, just kind of like trying to force stuff. I saw an interesting thing on Twitter. And they were comparing Minshew and Baker Mayfield. And I think Baker is better, but I don't think it's super far away. I think Minshew is a worse version of Baker. Like, I think Minshew plays the same. He slings it around. He's very reckless. He's kind of a rapscallion, pirate, gunslinger quarterback. But I don't think he has the tools that Baker does. He certainly doesn't have the players. I mean, he doesn't. You never know if Minshew had OBJ and Jarvis Landry and Nick Chubb. Maybe he could be better than Baker. But I think right now, I think I would side with Baker on that one. But Titans are 2-0. So Titans are an AFC Championship team who seem to have it figured out. The Titans remind me, and maybe it's a Mike Vrabel thing, but the Titans look like one of those teams where they probably shouldn't be winning this consistently, and maybe it's just Vrabel. I mean, this is the difference between someone like Mike Vrabel and Matt Patricia, where the Titans win games that they probably shouldn't win or that they are not playing their best at, and they just figure it out. Same with teams like New England. Teams like Detroit, they don't do that. Teams like Atlanta, they don't do that. They blow those games. They blow the games that they're supposed to win. And that's an organizational thing. So is Tannehill as good as some people think? Probably not. But the Titans as an organization, very impressive. 2-0, undefeated. So good look for them too. AFC Championship material, I don't know about that, but when Derrick Henry gets heated up, this team could be really dangerous. Next game. Vikings Colts. Vikings and Colts. Colts get a win 28-11. The Vikings, absolutely terrible game from Kirk Cousins. 11 for 26 for 113 yards. That's a 4.3 yards per attempt. That is or yards per completion. That is so damn bad. 0 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, a 9.4 QBR. 9.4. So bad from Kirk Cousins. I mean, we've talked about it in Minnesota. We know that they aren't the Minnesota of last year or of the year before. They're not the same deal. They're kind of rebuilding in a lot of positions. Cousins is just so hot and cold. I mean, Cousins is, when he's bad, he is so bad. On the other side of things, Phillip Rivers, 19 for 25, 214 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 pick, nothing crazy from him. Jonathan Taylor had a great game, 26 carries, 101 yards, 3.9 yards per carry with a touchdown. Pretty solid game from him. Indianapolis, good bounce back win after dropping one to Jacksonville. I think the Colts are a good coach team. I think the Colts are a good team. I mean, I had them as one of my sleepers in the AFC. They dropped that game to Jacksonville. It'd be so much different if they were 2-0. You know, I mean, losing that game to Jacksonville to start the season, not great. We kind of know what Rivers is going to give us. But the real story here is Minnesota. I mean, before the season, we're talking about Minnesota and Green Bay vying for the NFC North. I don't think anybody's saying that anymore. I mean, you talk about two teams that are completely different right now is the Green Bay Packers and the Minnesota Vikings. So it's tough. It's a tough sled right now for Vikings fans. I was talking to a Vikings fan last night. Look, I know it's not obvious, but you're rebuilding. I know it's not obvious, but this is not the Vikings team that went to the playoffs last year. This is not the defense. This is not the bread and butter, defense wins games, good running attack, Kirk Cousins figures it out. This is a team that's just young. This is a team that's missing a lot of players from previous years. Kirk Cousins is also struggling, which doesn't help. I mean, you kind of need him to be good, but this is just not going to be a good season for the Vikings. I would say they're like a 7 to 8 win team somewhere in there, and we're going to see a lot of these kind of games from the Vikings this year. Move on, huh? Oh, this game's fun. Go to the AFC East, huh? Bills and Dolphins. Bills get the win. Kind of an interesting game. The Bills 31-28, high-scoring affairs, high-scoring all across the league. I mean, the games we've talked about so far, 30-35, 40-39, 42-21, 33-30, 31-28. Some of these games have been high-scoring. But Bills get a win, 31-28, hold off the Dolphins. Bills 2-0, Dolphins 0-2. Josh Allen has another monster day. 24 for 35 for 417 yards and 4 touchdowns. Stephon Diggs gets involved, 8 receptions, 153 yards and a touchdown. To me, I think the Dolphins are okay. I think the Dolphins are just like treading water. No pun intended. But the Dolphins, in my opinion, are a team that's waiting for Tua, a team waiting for the next step. And so until we get there, until we get to that next step, I don't know what else you can expect from the Dolphins. Fitzpatrick is not the guy. I mean, Fitzpatrick was 31 for 47, 328, 2 touchdowns, and no interceptions. So he had a really good day. But I think the team knows, if that makes sense. Like, I think the team is just, they're trying. I mean, they're certainly playing hard. I mean, they almost won this game. But to me, it's just one of those deals where it's like, it's hard for me to judge Miami. It's hard for me to give you a proper analysis of the Dolphins when I know that this is not the Dolphins that we need to be analyzing. This isn't the team. This isn't the group that we're going to be talking about for the next couple of years. When Tua gets there, and when Tua starts to show his development, I'll be able to tell you more about the Dolphins. So I like their coaches. I like Brian Flores. I think the Dolphins have some decent things in place, but there's not much we can expect from them. Now the Bills. The Bills arguably have the most talented roster in the NFL. And I've told you before, it's going to be how far can Josh Allen take this team? If Josh Allen can play like Dak Prescott, I guess, if Josh Allen can play like Joe Flacco did in his Super Bowl run, there's no reason the Bills can't be a Super Bowl team. They have that much of a talented team. Now, I've been saying the Bills have the best defense in the league. Winning 31-28 against Miami, I need to see a little bit more from their defense. I mean, Josh Allen right now is playing pretty much out of his mind. I mean, this game right here, I thought Josh Allen was going to run around a lot because of how Miami struggled to contain Cam Newton in the previous week. But he only had 4 carries for 18 yards. So this wasn't even like a Josh Allen running around, Josh Allen on the ground kind of game. It was more of just Josh Allen dominating through the air. I mean, again, 24 for 35, 417 yards for 4 touchdowns, no interceptions. What are you going to say? That is an incredible game under center. So if Josh Allen can do that, then this team for sure can be a Super Bowl caliber team. The AFC East is interesting. I think the Jets and the Dolphins obviously aren't vying for it, but the Patriots are going to give them a real run. The Patriots will give the Bills a real shot here. Those games are going to be absolute must-see TV. Those games are going to be absolute, division deciders. And watching Bill Belichick figure out Josh Allen, that's going to be a very interesting thing. So this division is not decided, even though the Bills are 2-0. the Bills are taking that step. Josh Allen is taking that step, but they have the talent to be AFC Championship, Super Bowl, or bust. So going to the playoffs for the Bills isn't good enough. Winning the first round isn't good enough. Winning the division isn't good enough. This is a team that's loaded. This is a team that has to win. And I'm not saying they have to win now because Josh Allen is young. But this is not a thing where if you're a Bills fan, you can't sit back and say, oh, well, we won the division 3 years in a row. They got to win. And Josh Allen is going to be that catalyst for how much they win. But good things in Buffalo. Next game here. Oh, let's go to chat real quick. So many guys are really breaking out at quarterback. In general, lots of quarterbacks are playing really well to start. I agree. And I do think, let me say this as well about that. I think the quarterbacks you're seeing play really well to start are the quarterbacks that athletically and physically are gifted. The guys who can rely on their feet, the guys who can extend the plays, the guys with big arms. Because right now, tackling is bad, defenses are bad, game plans aren't great. So teams and players that can rely on their physical assets, a la Russell Wilson, Kyler Murray, Josh Allen, Cam Newton, those teams are looking really good. Whereas teams that are a bit more stale, a bit more sit in the pocket and throw it, a bit more game plan oriented, a la Matt Ryan, a la Drew Brees, a la Tom Brady, they don't look as good. So I think that right now we're seeing a running quarterback, a mobile quarterback, a athletic quarterback is better right now than ever. And that's pretty much apparent across the league. Next game. Oh, God, probably the ugliest game of the week. Niners-Jets, barf in my mouth. Niners win 31-13. We already talked about the injuries. Garoppolo's hurt. He missed this game, or he missed part of this game. Nick Mullins came in. Nick Mullins, a Southern Miss alum, an alum like myself. Mostert got hurt. The entire defensive line got hurt. Bosa's out for the year with an ACL. The Jets are a disaster. The Jets are a total dumpster fire disaster. Let's look at the box score here. Darnold, 21 for 32, 179 yards, touchdown, no picks. Very mediocre game from him. Frank Gore gets 21 carries. Look, you can't have Frank Gore get 21 carries in 2020 and expect to be a viable team. It's just not going to work. I mean, you look at these box scores, they make me want to puke all over my chest. Chris Hogan and Braxton Berrios are your two leading receivers. I just had to choke down vomit. Chris Hogan and Braxton Berrios and Frank Gore are carrying the load on offense. I mean, that's just not going to do it. On the flip side, you had Raheem Mostert, 8 carries, 92 yards. It's a little bit deceiving. He had an 80-yard run, so 1 carry for 80 yards, 7 carries for 12 yards. Quick maths. Jerick McKinnon, 3 carries for 77 yards. The worst play I've ever seen in my entire life. The Niners had a 3rd and 31. They gave a handoff to Jerick McKinnon, and they said, hey, man, just get like 2 yards so we can punt. 3rd and 31. And Jerick McKinnon runs for 55 yards and gets the first down. That is the Jets to a T. I think the Jets, unfortunately, are just a virus. I mean, chat is saying that Adam Gase is more of a virus than COVID. The Jets have a disease, and that disease is they don't believe that they're a winning franchise. They don't believe that they're a viable NFL franchise. I think what you're looking at right here, ladies and gentlemen, I think you're looking at the worst franchise in the NFL. There's no NFL team right now that has a worse stock or a lower stock than the Jets. They have nothing. And I think Adam Gase may get a bad rap because of how unlikable he is. I'm not saying he's a good coach, but I think more people are calling for his head because of how unlikable he is. But at this point, the Jets have to do something. Even if he's a scapegoat, get Gase the hell out of there. He is destroying, or this franchise is cannibalizing itself, whether it's fair or not, whether it should be happening or shouldn't be happening. But Adam Gase being there, these players just openly now, like ex-players like Jamal Adams, openly saying like, look, this team doesn't want to win. This franchise doesn't want to win. It's a cesspool. That ain't good. How do you think that makes these players that are there feel? I mean, this is a team at home playing a Niners team with 4 or 5 injuries in the game, starting running back, starting quarterback, 2 defensive linemen, Niners traveling from Frisco all the way to New York, playing the early game, and they get dominated. I mean, this was never close. It was 21-3 at halftime, 31-13. I mean, this Jets team, this could be one of those teams that lose every game. This could be one of those teams that if you told me Adam Gase was going to coach every game this year, I would not be surprised if they lost every single game. Because this team is walking out there every Sunday, and they're walking out there to lose. Do not back this team. I had a Jets +7 ticket, and I might as well have just took $100 and shoved it up my ass. I mean, we don't need to be crass here, but that's exactly what it was. Like, this team, no matter how much the numbers say to bet on them, no matter how much the numbers say to back them, do not. That's how bad this squad is. So the Jets, sad to see, but they are begging for the days of Mark Sanchez and Rex Ryan. On the flip side, the Niners, a lot of injuries, man. I mean, it's really hard to take a team that their calling card is their defense, their calling card is their defensive line, and then to say, well, you have no defensive line now because multiple starters are out for the year. Your quarterback, who's already testy, is hurt. Your running back, who you got rid of the other one, and Breda. So your only running back, really, in Mostert, he's hurt. Your wide receiver core is hurt. I mean, I don't want to say Frisco's done, but Frisco, I mean, I just don't see how they can be competitive like they were last year, missing that many pieces, specifically on the defensive line. I mean, like, it's the same deal like in New England whenever Brady got hurt. The rest of the team was fine. But when you're losing your calling card, when you're losing why you're winning games, it's really hard for me to say that this team will win very many games. I mean, how are they going to compete with Seattle? How are they going to compete with Arizona? They already lost to Arizona. So is this the third best team in the NFC West right now? Probably. I mean, right now, would you say that you believe more in Seattle, Arizona, or 49ers? I think everyone would say they believe much more in Seattle. Seattle for sure. I think they would believe in Arizona. So it's one of those deals where, look, injuries are tough. And this is a team that could have won the Super Bowl last year. And they come back and they will be lucky to make the playoffs. I mean, it's going to take a lot. It's going to take a whole lot for this team to make the playoffs. In my opinion, this team's probably just going to be about 500, and injuries are probably going to have a lot to do with that. But also Garoppolo, like, he seems to be regressing, and now he's hurt. So it's not good days in Frisco. Not at all. Let's continue. We have the Rams and the Eagles. Rams very impressive in this game. 37-19. Jared Goff, 20 for 27, 267, 3 touchdowns. Jared Goff's a guy, look. Jared Goff is a guy that if you let him do what he wants to do, he's going to be really good. Jared Goff, tool-wise, man's is Tim Taylor, okay? Tool-wise, he's got it all. Great arm, great accuracy, throws a beautiful deep ball, all that stuff. But he can only do a few different things. He can only really do play-action passes. He can only really do one-read passes. So if you let him do that, he is going to be a problem. If you let him do that, the Rams will work. And Sean McVay, I think, is the coach of the year right now. I mean, Sean McVay is out-coaching every team he's against. He out-coached Philadelphia here. He obviously out-coached Mike McCarthy in the first week. The Rams are not a good team, but they're undefeated. They're 2-0. And yeah, they have a really tough division. I don't think they escaped the division. But you got to love what you're seeing from Sean McVay. And if he can get Jared Goff grooving like Goff did early in his career, this could be a team that's a couple pieces away from getting right back into the conversation of NFC championships and Super Bowls. This is not a bad team. It's just not a great team. It's just not a Super Bowl team. But it's got the guys. It's got the guys. And it's so important to have a foundation in the NFL, an organizational foundation that is strong. You don't want to have a terrible owner. You don't want to have a terrible coach. You don't want to have a terrible GM. The Rams at least have those pieces in place. The Rams at least have Sean McVay in place. The Rams at least have a quarterback in place that trusts the head coach and vice versa. So I'd be feeling pretty good if I was the Rams for the future here. And you never know. I mean, they're 2-0. So it's hard for me to be like, hey, this 2-0 team isn't going to make the playoffs. But they're doing it despite the talent on the team. And I think Sean McVay is the biggest reason for that. So kudos to Sean McVay. On the other side, the Eagles, I don't know. I mean, the Eagles are so hot and cold as well. The Eagles are one of those teams where, hey, they're 0-2, but they could win the next 10 games in a row, and all of a sudden the Eagles are in the NFC Championship game. I mean, that's just how they are. That's how they always are. Even their Super Bowl seasons, there's stretches where they just look awful. So, long week for Eagles play Cincy this week. Very interesting. Long week for Cincy, and we finally might get Geno and Williams back. Yeah, it's going to be an interesting game because Philly's back is absolutely against the wall. Cincy gets some extra rest, some extra time to game plan. That's going to be two teams that desperately need a win. Wentz needs to get going. Yeah, Wentz needs to figure it out. Wentz is streaky. Wentz is kind of like a better version of Kirk Cousins, where he's a bit better than Cousins, and his ceiling is higher than Cousins, but he does the same stuff, where he's just awful or he's incredible. And Philly's kind of like that. I mean, like we said, they're hot and cold. So we need Philly to figure themselves out before this thing gets going. Next game, Broncos-Steelers. Steelers going to win here. 2-0 for the Steelers, 26-21. Denver struggled here. Drew Lock went out. Actually, they were okay at the end of the game, so it wasn't really a Drew Lock thing, and they started off slow, I guess. It was 17-3 at halftime. So the game ended relatively close, so good for Denver there. Pittsburgh, Pittsburgh's one of those teams where they're good. Pittsburgh's good. Pittsburgh's defense good. Pittsburgh has good players everywhere. And it's just if Ben Roethlisberger can figure it out. I'll say this about the Steelers, and this is something you probably won't hear much of, but if you're looking at Pittsburgh, let's go to the box score. So Jeff Driscoll had to throw it 34 times for Denver. You never want to see that. But Big Ben, 29 for 41, 311, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. Played okay. Only about a 38.7 QBR, so nothing special there. James Conner, great game, 16 carries, 106 yards, and a touchdown. Big Ben here really just kind of needs to be Peyton Manning in Denver. That's really about it. The Steelers are well beyond the days where they need Big Ben to be the best player on the field. They're well past the days of needing Big Ben to run around, to make things happen, to create, to lead them, all that stuff. They've got Juju Smith-Schuster. They've got James Conner. They've got a ball-hawking defense. So Pittsburgh is low-key, high-key, low-key, high-key, a good team. Now, they're in the same division as the Ravens. So can they win the division? Probably not. So they need a wild card. And if they're a wild card team, they're not who you want to play. I think Pittsburgh is actually underrated. And Big Ben is kind of funny because they're underrated, and he may be the most underrated quarterback in NFL history. When it's all said and done, where do you have Big Ben? Like, where is he all time? Do you have him top 15? Do you have him top 20? I'm not sure. I'm not sure where he falls, but I'll tell you this. He's better than wherever he falls. He probably is like a top 15 guy. He probably is a top 12-ish guy somewhere in there. But I don't think many people would put him there. And I think right now is a good example of that entire idea in Pittsburgh. People are sleeping on this team. And maybe it's because of how good the Ravens have been, or maybe it's because of just kind of Big Ben's been injured for the past couple of years and Pittsburgh hasn't been super relevant. But I don't think there's any reason that Pittsburgh can't be a playoff team or a deep run playoff team. I mean, you look at the AFC, there are some weaknesses. There are some holes in there. So Pittsburgh, if they get hot late in the year, I think this team could be scary. Denver, obviously, people were expecting Drew Lock to take a big step. So if he's hurt, I don't think Jeff Driscoll is who they want taking 34 attempts. So the book is kind of out. We'll have to wait and see. Lock's supposed to miss a few weeks with a rotator cuff sprain. And if that's the case, Denver's 0-2 now. They could be 0-5 really quick. No offense, Jeff Driscoll. Blake Bortles. Oh, that's right. They're bringing in Blake Bortles. So take everything I just said about Jeff Driscoll and replace Jeff Driscoll with Blake Bortles, and it's the exact same. You don't want Blake Bortles taking 34 attempts. Blake Bortles sucks ass. If Blake Bortles starts, the Broncos will probably lose. So tough. Hey, we're not here to pump up Blake Bortles. That dude sucks. Blake Bortles is probably the reason Jacksonville did not go to the Super Bowl a few years ago. Next, Panthers-Bucks. So the Bucks have kind of a false score. Not going to lie, guys. It's 31-17. But the Buccaneers scored with like a minute left. They were just trying to run the clock out, and Leonard Fournette broke a 50-yard run. So really, this was a bit less. This was a bit more like, that 24-17 world, somewhere in there. Pretty decent game. Tom Brady started off hot. He cooled down dramatically. He was 23 for 35 for 217 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 pick. It's kind of funny because if you go back and look at Twitter, he was good in the first 10 minutes, and it was a ton of Brady's back, the quarterback's back, Hall of Famer's back. This is the Brady we want. And then you see the end of the game, and you're like, oh, shit, 23 for 35, 217, a touchdown and a pick. Tom Brady has been so bad that people are getting excited for the first half of 23 of 35, 217, a touchdown and a pick. That's what you need to know about Tom Brady. That's where we're at with Tom Brady, is that people are literally celebrating the beginning of a game that leads you to 23 of 35, 217, a touchdown and a pick. Fournette, like I said, 12 carries, 103 yards. He did have a 46-yarder to end the game, so he was above average. Mike Evans got going. That is probably the only real positive from this game for Tampa Bay, is that Mike Evans got involved. He had 7 receptions, 104 yards, and a touchdown. 10 targets. So I had a feeling that this would go one of two ways. I had a feeling that Brady was either going to force balls, Shiloh style to Mike Evans, and he was going to try and do whatever he could to get him going, or Brady was going to be very stubborn and just not throw the ball to him at all. So good to see that he got him involved. Chris Godwin wasn't in this game, so that could have been part of it as well. Where else are you going to go with the ball? This was okay for Tampa. I think, like I said, it's important that Evans got going. This is controversial yet, Bray, but Evans is way more important to this team than Tom Brady. Brady's just going to do what he does, and he's got to get his weapons involved. That's his role. His role is to spread the ball to these playmakers. So it's good to see him starting to do that. The real big story, though, is Christian McCaffrey going down with the ankle sprain. He's expected to miss 4 to 6 weeks. Carolina, we knew were going to have some issues. Bridgewater, 33 for 42, 367, no touchdowns, 2 picks. The issues are more organizational. And they're not even really issues. They're just growing pains. Shout out to Fred Savage. But if you don't get that reference, what are you even doing listening to this show? The problem is that they have a brand new head coach, a brand new owner. So they have David Tepper, who, as an owner, is probably one of the more progressive analytical owners out there. And a head coach, they have Matt Rule, probably one of the most progressive analytical coaches out there. That is not good when you don't have any kind of time. They need time. Carolina is a buy low stock. This team will be good. This organization will be good. Teddy Bridgewater is not part of that will be good process. Christian McCaffrey is, but now he's hurt, so we've got to see what happens with him. Carolina is probably 2 years away from us seeing their true potential. If you told me that Carolina will win the Super Bowl in the next 6 years, I would not be surprised at all. I don't know who's on the team. I don't think it's with Teddy Bridgewater, but I think Matt Rule and Tepper can create enough of a system or just kind of a theme or kind of like a foundation or a belief or whatever where this team can be good. And you're seeing multiple teams in the division slowly falling apart. The Saints are about to be awful when Breeze leaves and all that stuff. They may be awful now. The Falcons are about to be awful whenever Ryan and Julio and all them leave. They might be awful now. And the Bucs are going to be rebuilding whenever Tom Brady and the rest of them leave. So the Panthers are already a step ahead in the rebuilding process. The Panthers are in the driver's seat for the NFC South for the next 5 years. They're not there. They're not there now. They're not there right now, and that's fine. That's okay. We know that. Tampa Bay, this is such a false win. I hate driving this point home, but you see this and you say, oh, cool, Tampa bounced back, 31-17. Yay. I don't see that. I see this as Tampa Bay being who they are. I see this being Tampa Bay is this team. They are the team that they have good players, but they've got Tom Brady throwing. We already went over his stat line. They've got, Mike Evans has to have monster games. Leonard Fournette. Is this a true stat line? Did he really get 103 yards? How much do you count the 46-yarder at the end? I don't know. But what I know is I'll make a bet. I would make a bet right now that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers will not make the playoffs this year. I do not think this team is a playoff team. I do not think this team is good enough. I do not think Tom Brady is good enough. I think this team is one of the fakest teams in the NFL. And I think anybody that's still on this ship is going to be sinking in about 10 weeks. I would be absolutely stunned if the Buccaneers make the playoffs. Absolutely stunned. Controversial yet brave. Ooh, next game. Cardinals, Washington. The Washington football team. 30-15 Arizona. Guys, don't look now. But Kyler Murray might be the real. Don't look now. But Arizona might be the real. So let's talk about Arizona. Okay? Second-year quarterback. You want to see quarterbacks develop. Kyler Murray has certainly seemingly developed. 26 of 38, 286 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 pick on the ground, 8 carries, 67 yards, 2 touchdowns. Now, let me play devil's advocate. I don't think Kyler Murray can run the ball for a majority of his career. I think he's just too small. No offense to Kyler Murray, but I don't think you're going to get 8 to 10 carries successfully out of him every week. And that's fine. That's fine. I think even though he's 5'8", even though he's small, I do think Kyler Murray has a huge arm for his size and all that stuff. I think his arm is as good as you can get in the NFL, and that makes up for it. I think the biggest thing is, from what I hear, Cliff Kingsbury. I've heard that Cliff Kingsbury is leaps and bounds better right now than he was last year. And that's so huge. That's so huge that you have an offensive coach in an offensive league with a second-year quarterback who's incredibly dynamic, a stud wide receiver who's incredibly dynamic, and a good running back. So when you have all those pieces and you have an offensive coach who's taking such big leaps, that is an enormous reason for their successes. I don't think Arizona is a, deep playoff team. I don't think Arizona is a Super Bowl team, but I do think they're an exciting team. And if you're a Cardinals fan, I mean, there's nothing better than having a young quarterback who's good, a young coach who's good. The ceiling is sky high for Arizona, but I think that Kyler Murray, I don't know if he can continue what he's doing right now because of the running and because, game plans and all that stuff once the league kind of catches up. But if we are seeing the NFL shift, and we're seeing the NFL shift to, hey, running quarterbacks are the move, mobile quarterbacks are the move, then Arizona's way ahead of the curve. So I'm still acting like it's a bit half and half. Like, I think the mobile quarterback thing is really good right now, but I think that we're not evolved to the point to where only mobile quarterbacks win. So we're somewhere in the middle. So I think that Arizona will fall back a little bit to the norm, but I think they're much better than they were last year. And again, with a team that has a second-year quarterback, second-year head coach, what else can you ask for? DeAndre Hopkins is such a great boom for this team. He's a guy that Kyler Murray obviously trusts. He's a guy that makes the team feel like they're good enough. And good for Arizona. Let's go to chat. I've been on Arizona for a while now. When we debated the best division of football, they were the reason I thought the West was better than the South. Yeah, I mean, look, I think it's obvious right now that the West is better than the South. The South is weird. The South is like, on paper, it's incredible. But on the field, it's shit. Drew Brees on paper, second best quarterback to ever live. On the field right now, second best quarterback in New Orleans. Okay, so the South is, they're falling apart. Not looking good for the South. The last time the South was this bad, Abraham Lincoln was the president. So I agree that the West is the best team in the NFL right now. And Arizona, I mean, I was not a believer. Not just this year. I wasn't a believer last year. I said the Cliff Kingsbury hire was stupid, and I thought it wasn't going to work. And I was wrong. I've been wrong before, and I'm wrong now. I think that Arizona's taken a bunch of leaps forward, and good for them. Washington, we know what Washington is, guys. We know what Washington is. Dwayne Haskins, 19 for 33, 223 yards, 1 touchdown, no picks, QBR of 13. Antonio Gibson, 13 carries. If Antonio Gibson walked in my house right now and stole my shoes, I wouldn't know who the hell Antonio Gibson is. Okay? Terry McLaurin, 7 receptions, 125 yards, and a touchdown. If Terry McLaurin walked in my house right now and stole my shoes, I wouldn't know who the hell he is. All right? It is what it is. I don't know who these players are. I don't think Washington knows who these players are. Ron Rivera is a big deal there. I'll give Haskins this. I think Haskins is bad, but he does not turn the ball over. And as long as he doesn't turn the ball over, then they can be in games. You know, they can be right there. Washington took a while to get going. It was 20-3 in the fourth. So I guess they made this respectable to 30-15. At least they showed some life at the end there. But you know, I don't know if Dwayne Haskins is the guy in Washington. It is good that even though he's struggling, he's not turning the ball over. But I just haven't seen enough out of Haskins. Dude, Terry McLaurin is incredible. He's real. He's the real. So apparently chat is Terry McLaurin stands. So not only, you know, we have the greatest football show available right now, and we're also Terry McLaurin's stan club. So we stand Terry McLaurin here. All right, let's move. Next game. Woo! Weird game here. Kansas City Chargers. Chiefs win a wild one in overtime, 23-20. Butker, the kicker, made 3 straight field goals of 50-plus yards to win the game in OT. Justin Herbert had to start when Tyrod Taylor was hurt with a chest injury. And I'll tell you this. You know, Justin Herbert didn't look bad. I think Justin Herbert is pretty similar to Josh Allen. And having to start a game you weren't prepared to start for against the defending Super Bowl champions, Herbert was pretty good. I was pretty impressed with Herbert. He cost me a lot of money in college. I lost a lot of bets betting on him. I'm not going to talk about that, but I am impressed with what Herbert had. I think if I'm the Chargers, I might just go with Herbert for the rest of the year. I think it might be better now to just say, you know what? Let's go with Herbert. Let's take the lumps. Tyrod Taylor, get the hell out of my face. I'm surprised no one talked about this, but I think this could be a little bit of a situation where the Chiefs were looking ahead to Monday Night Football against Baltimore. I think they may have taken the Chargers lightly here. I think that could be what happened, and I haven't heard anyone. I didn't hear anybody last week say it. I haven't heard anyone mention that the Chiefs were in kind of a letdown spot with in between San Diego and Baltimore. So this was a weird game because the Chiefs were just not the Chiefs. I mean, Mahomes ended up with a good stat line. He's Patrick Mahomes, 27 for 47, 302, 2 touchdowns, no picks, an 85 QBR on the ground, 6 carries for 54 yards. Clyde Edwards-Helaire was pretty bad, 10 carries, 38 yards. You know, he was okay in the passing game. He had 8 targets, but these are games where, you know, the Chiefs were down. You know, the Chiefs were kind of getting slapped around here. It was 14-6 at halftime. The Chargers came out hot, and then the Chiefs came back, and the Chiefs win these games. We win these games. That's what the Chiefs do. That's the organization that they have. Games like that, they just find a way to win, and that's how you win the Super Bowl. I mean, the Chiefs are the perfect team to come from behind because they are never playing differently. When they're ahead, they're playing like they're behind. They're just slinging the ball around. They're moving fast. They're taking shots. They can score at will. So that's why no matter what the score is, the Chiefs are always viable to come back. I honestly do think the Chiefs were looking ahead to Baltimore. I put no stock in this game as far as the score. The only thing I would take away from this really is Herbert and San Diego, or Los Angeles, excuse me. I keep saying San Diego. if you're the Chargers, just move to the kid. Just move to Herbert. There's no reason to play Taylor now. Taylor, I think the idea was Herbert is relatively raw, and so Taylor could inch him along. But now that he's already been fed to the wolves, now that his feet have already been to the fire, and he's performed this well, why not? Why not? Why not just let him play out the season and see what else he can learn? So I think we may see that with the Chargers. It'll be interesting to see the Chiefs against the Ravens. That'll be a real test there for Kansas City. But this game, if anything, I just say, wow, the Chiefs win a game they shouldn't have. This is where a lot of teams slip, and the Chiefs don't. That marks a good franchise. So that marks a really good franchise. Next game, speaking of really good franchises, the Ravens take care of business, dominate the Texans 33-16. Lamar Jackson, 18 of 24, 204, a touchdown in the air. He adds 16 carries for 54 yards on the ground. The week before, he didn't run much. So to see him get 16 carries is a bit more what Baltimore does here. Again, though, you're talking about a really, really pedestrian stat line for Lamar Jackson. And when you're talking about a team that has an MVP and he has a game like this where it's super average on the air and good on the ground, relatively good on the ground. 16 carries for 54 isn't great. But when you have that, if I told you, all right, Lamar Jackson had 204 yards in the air, 50 yards on the ground, you're like, okay, well, they probably did okay. And the fact that they win 33-16 in blowout fashion, that's a really good sign. Really, really good sign for the Ravens. The Ravens could have looked ahead in this spot, a non-divisional game going into Kansas City, or playing Kansas City. It's going to be in Baltimore, but could have been a look-ahead spot, could have been a letdown spot. They did not let that happen. That's because John Harbaugh is a really good coach, and the Ravens have a really good organization. On the flip side here, Houston, they're just not a good team. They're just not a good team. Houston does not have a good roster. They have a great quarterback, but that's about it, man. That's all they really have. So Houston needs a lot of help. Houston needs a lot for Deshaun Watson. They've already paid him. They already have him there. So now it's time for the front office and Bill O'Brien to get Deshaun Watson the help in order to make this team viable. That is not including trading away DeAndre Hopkins. So we'll see what Houston can do in the next couple of years, developing this team and this roster. But as of right now, they're a pretty below average team, roster-wise, devoid of really any talent anywhere. Now let's get to the games. Let's get to the real games, huh? Sunday night football. Sunday night football. What a game. One of the best games I've seen in a long time. Seahawks, Patriots. Seahawks win 35-30. Patriots, Cam Newton held up at the goal line as time expires. Couldn't get in there. They were going for the win. Couldn't get it. There's a lot to take away with this game. So let's take away the first thing. New England is fine. Cam Newton is good. Cam Newton is healthy. All right. Cam Newton looks good. Cam Newton played good. There are probably 15 to 20 teams in the NFL that right now would rather have Cam Newton than their starter. The New Orleans Saints included, might I add. And I said this last night watching the game. Cam Newton's fine. And it's weird why Cam Newton got passed on by so many teams. Cam Newton is healthy. He certainly looks healthy. He went 30 for 44 for 397 yards, a touchdown and a pick. He also ran the ball for 11 carries for 47 yards and 2 touchdowns. Russell Wilson, what else can be said about this guy? I am the biggest Russell Wilson stan on earth. There's so much to talk about with this game. There really is. Let's start with the game first, and then we'll talk about the individual players. What a fun game. And I think that the Seahawks right now probably are the best. This is the best team as far as tools and weapons and whatever and balance that Russell Wilson maybe ever had. Russell Wilson has DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, 2 stud receivers, dynamic receivers. He also has Chris Carson, who has been really good his entire career. And Russell's playing at a super high level. So offensively, is this the best offensive team that Russell Wilson's ever had? You certainly can make the argument. And then with Jamal Adams on defense, Jamal Adams might be the defensive player of the year right now. Like Jamal Adams, well, he definitely is right now, but he might be the favorite for the rest of the year. So you're talking about having arguably the MVP in Russell Wilson, and then arguably the defensive player of the year in Jamal Adams. This team is real. Seattle is really, really real. I don't know how people are sleeping on Russell like this. The tweet that I put out was, if you take every quarterback in history and we're having a draft, every quarterback in history, and you start your franchise with a draft, I think Russell goes top 5. I think Russell Wilson would go top 5 there. And it's so weird because he's never got one single MVP vote. Ever. Never got one MVP vote. And he's been so good for so long. And he's getting better. He's actually getting better. I mean, who else would you draft ahead of him? Tom Brady for sure. Probably Peyton Manning. My list was Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, Brett Favre. I think Joe Montana was one. And then Russell Wilson. You know, like, as far as a leader, as far as a guy you want on your team, as far as a quarterback, as far as a guy running the troops, all that stuff, I don't know who's better than Russell Wilson. I don't know. I mean, obviously, you could say Patrick Mahomes is better just because it's Patrick freaking Mahomes. But Russell Wilson might be, right now, the best quarterback in the NFL. You know, I don't know. I just, every time I watch him, he's better and better. I mean, he's damn near been perfect this season. He's damn near been perfect through 2 games. What a player, man. And this team, with Jamal Adams playing the way he's playing, and this offense playing how they're playing, this is a real Super Bowl contender. I mean, again, when we go over the top 10, we'll go into this further, but this is a team that has Super Bowl aspirations. This is a team that I think is Super Bowl or bust. As far as the Patriots, controversial yet brave, I think the Patriots are better right now than they were last year. I think Cam Newton, I'm not afraid to say it, Cam Newton is an upgrade over Tom Brady. Write that down. He just adds so much more to this team. And it's such a Patriots thing, it's such a Bill Belichick thing, that he takes Cam Newton and says, okay, I've only had you for a couple months, or maybe not even a couple months, but I've only had you here for a little bit of time. But this team looks like Cam Newton's been there for 6 years. He looks like he was drafted by the Patriots. The whole damn team looks like a different team. How the hell does Bill Belichick do this? How does this team do this? I mean, if you look at how Bill Belichick is handling Cam Newton, and you look at how Tom Brady's handling his transition to Tampa Bay, this is so much better. They have not missed a step. I'll say this, and this is controversial yet brave again. I would actually upgrade the New England Patriots off of this loss. I think this loss was so impressive that I would upgrade them, and they may actually be in my top 10. I would upgrade the Patriots even though they lost this game because of the way Cam Newton played, the fact that I now know Cam Newton is healthy. I said it last week. I said we need Cam Newton to show us, prove to us that he can he can do it in the air. And he damn sure did. This is a guy now who is not MVP Cam, but close enough. Close enough. Now this leads me to a different conversation about Cam Newton. Let me go to Twitter here. I saw this as well on Twitter, so we're gonna open this can of worms. Let's open this up. I believe it was Rich Eisen who tweeted about this. And he listed who was paid more than Cam Newton. Okay, maybe it wasn't Rich Eisen. I could have swore it was. He might have quote tweeted it. Let's see. This is something I definitely wanted to get into. When I saw it, I was like, "Oh yeah, this is a great conversation for the pod or for our live NFL show. What a show it is." Let's see here. Where is it? Again, it was a list of. I know I saw my boy Bobani Jones quote tweeted. Let me find it. I know Bomani definitely did. Excuse me if you're listening on audio, I'm scrolling. Here we go. Quarterbacks who signed deals for more guaranteed money than Cam Newton this offseason. Andy Dalton, Blaine Gabbert, Colt McCoy, Jeff Driscoll, Chase Daniels, Marcus Mariota, Case Keenum, A.J. McCarron, Matt Schaub, Matt Barkley, Nathan Peterman. It's also worth noting, A.J. McCarron plays behind me in the group in my weekly golf game on Saturday. Something to think about. But those are the players. Now, there was a reply that I was hoping I would see, but it might have got buried. The top reply to this tweet that I saw was that teams are worried about how Cam Newton is invested in playing quarterback. They're worried about, does he care more? This is a tweet. This isn't my thoughts. The tweet, I was paraphrasing, but the tweet was saying that teams are worried more about, and it's just some stupid fan, but this is the narrative, that they were worried about, is Cam more concerned about his outfits, more concerned about fashion, or more concerned about playing quarterback? And I don't want to make this a race thing. I don't think it's fully a race thing, but I do think it's so interesting how this happens. So this guy is taking Cam Newton, who is a former MVP, a former Super Bowl, not winning, but he went to the Super Bowl, a guy who's played his entire career with really no problems, no off-field real issues, no real suspensions, he's had some injury issues, but nothing crazy. And the narrative on Cam Newton, according to this fan, is still his fashion, his outfits. It's just funny to me how this can be a thing. Like, how can this be a thing? How can they care about what Cam Newton's wearing, about if he's arrogant, about if he's smiling, about how he acts, when you never hear about what Baker Mayfield's wearing? You never hear about what any of these other quarterbacks are doing, or if they're arrogant or cocky, or if they're focused on quarterback or not. When Peyton Manning was in 60 commercials on Sundays, when he was hosting Saturday Night Live, when he was doing all of that, how many times did you hear, is Peyton Manning focused on his comedy career, or is he focused on the NFL? I just think Cam Newton is so disrespected, I guess. And it's so weird because I hear so many people say, I just don't like Cam Newton. I don't like Cam Newton. And I can't figure out why, he says with a smirk. I don't want to just say it's because he's black. But there is a quarterback who's notably not on this list. Can y'all figure it out, chat? Can y'all figure out which quarterback signed for, or which one is not on this list? I'll give you a hint. It's Jameis Winston. Jameis Winston isn't on this list. This list, again, Andy Dalton, Blaine Gabbert, Colt McCoy, Jeff Driscoll, Chase Daniel, Marcus Mariota, Case Keenum, A.J. McCarron, Matt Schaub, Matt Barkley, Nathan Peterman, all signed for more guaranteed money than Cam Newton and Jameis Winston. Isn't that weird? Isn't that funny? And again, I'm not going to go full race bait here. I'm not going to go full on and say that the reason that people are doubting Cam Newton, the reason that Cam Newton's narrative is different than the narrative of Nathan Peterman, is because Cam Newton is black. But this is a conversation. Why the hell are these teams passing up on Cam Newton? Why did the Denver Broncos pass up on Cam Newton? Why did the Jacksonville Jaguars? Why are these teams passing on him? I mean, why? And the idea, like, oh, well, maybe he was hurt, right? The idea that, oh, well, we didn't know. We didn't know. That is so irrelevant because, one, all these teams have world-class medical analysis where they can do all these tests. Obviously, he's healthy, so it wasn't that. And even if he was, where it's like, yeah, okay, we're worried about the health, that still doesn't make sense for why he's signing for less guaranteed money than these guys. If you're worried about Cam Newton's health, it's like, wait, we're worried about his health so much that Nathan Peterman is getting more guaranteed money than Cam Newton? You don't have the medical teams that can tell you how he is medically? You don't have the teams, the doctors that can give you some kind of report on how healthy he is? It just doesn't make any sense to me. I got this GIF playing like nonstop here. But I just think that Cam Newton, at this point of his career, when you look at what Cam Newton has done his entire career, it's just so crazy to me that he's still this underrated. And maybe it's not underrated. Maybe he's just bottom line disrespected. I mean, is that possible that Cam Newton is disrespected? Have you ever heard a teammate, have you ever heard anyone that's played with Cam Newton come out and say that they hated playing with Cam Newton? Because I certainly haven't. I mean, where is it coming from? Why is this the narrative with Cam? And if the answer is that he's black, I understand that. But I'm trying to play devil's advocate here, and trying to figure out what could be the alternative reason. How is the Patriots the only team? How are the Patriots the only team? I mean, let's look at the NFL here. You're talking about the Dolphins. I understand that Tua is waiting. But again, you can get Cam Newton super cheap. If you're the Dolphins, wouldn't you rather have Cam Newton for a year? Because Cam Newton's a little bit more like Tua, and Cam Newton can show Tua a little bit more about, hey, man, this is how you play when you're mobile. This is how you kind of navigate running and whatever. Then Ryan Fitzpatrick, if you're the Jets, I mean, I guess I can get it if you want to play Darnold, but the Giants, are you really ready to go with Daniel Jones? Washington, again, don't you think Washington would be fine having Cam play a year and let Haskins sit and learn from Cam? I mean, we're going through these teams. Chicago, why bring in Foles over Cam? The Lions, the Packers, Vikings, they're all set. Houston set. Colts, Phillip Rivers, whatever. Jaguars, Minshew or Cam? I don't know. I mean, Denver, like some people have said in chat, they're just okay with Drew Lock. I don't know. I mean, I just think that it's just kind of obvious at this point of this narrative that Cam Newton has stuck with him. And you know what? I'm happy for Cam Newton. I hope Cam Newton dominates. I hope he has a great year. I hope the Patriots go to the playoffs. I hope Cam Newton has a fantastic year. I think Cam Newton has been a good player his whole career. Obviously, he's former MVP, former Super Bowl quarterback. And it's good to see how they're using him in New England. Let's go to chat here. If Cam was white and played the same way for the Broncos, he'd be bigger than the NFL. Where else do we hear about the fashion thing and people focus more on Hollywood? LeBron, Westbrook. You see it a lot in the NBA and what race the majority of the players. I mean, I can't argue with that. I cannot argue with that. I think that is obviously a big part of this. But what a game. What a performance, these teams. This was a beautiful one to watch. I think the ceiling is high for both these teams. I think the Seahawks can legitimately win the Super Bowl this year. And I think the Patriots aren't dead in the AFC East. I think they could win the AFC East. I think they could be dangerous in the playoffs. I think as Cam Newton gets used to the system, as the system gets used to Cam Newton, as these players all get figured out, I mean, I think the Patriots are in a good spot too. I think the Patriots are better than the Buccaneers. 100%. 100%. Oh, Lord have mercy. Lord have mercy. Let's go to Monday Night Football. Saints, Raiders. What a disaster this game was. It's hard for me to even begin to explain how terrible the Saints looked. It's hard for me to even explain how terrible this team played and how just abysmal Drew Brees was. This stat line could not be more fake. This stat line might as well be a Kardashian. 26 for 38, 312 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 pick. No. I tell you no. This was the same shit the whole game. It was dump passes. Drew Brees was missing wide open people. The pick was terrible. The Saints are in some real trouble. The window is closed. I'll tell you that. The window is closed for New Orleans. This a Super Bowl team. This team sucks. Alvin Kamara was good. I mean, Alvin Kamara was really good this game. 13 carries, 79 yards, 2 touchdowns on the ground, 9 receptions, 95 yards in the air. And yes, they were missing Michael Thomas. But this team, I don't even know where to start with this team. Drew Brees is an issue right now. Drew Brees has completed one pass for more than 20 yards in the first 2 games. If Drew Brees can't throw the ball more than 8 yards, we're in some trouble. There is not a doubt in my mind I could have done what Drew Brees did last night. I could have played that game. I would have had 26 completions with 38 attempts and 312 yards because I can throw the ball 6 yards to a scat back. I can throw the ball 3 yards to a tight end. I can do that. We don't need Drew Brees to be doing that. We don't need Sean Payton to be doing that. With 30 seconds left, down 10, they were throwing 6-yard out routes. I have never seen, you talk about a team completely flipping its identity. The Saints with this high-powered offense, creative offense, it does all kind of stuff. And what the hell did we see? We saw a Madden playbook where the only play in the whole damn playbook was slants and mesh. And if you ever play Madden, you know what mesh is. It was the same play for 3 hours. And this is something else I don't get with Sean Payton. Taysom Hill is available. You paid Taysom Hill $20 million. Drew Brees can't throw the ball more than 6 yards. It's time to get creative. Taysom Hill has 2 carries. 2 carries. 2. Hey, Sean, I understand that we don't need Taysom Hill to have 20 carries a game, but maybe expand the playbook a little bit if Drew Brees seriously can't make plays more than 10 yards down the field. What are we now? What are the Saints now? Are the Saints a team now where they have to win games 21-0? They have to win the games 21-17? Or the defense has to score? Are we the Vikings now? Are we a team where if we go behind, we're screwed because Brees can't throw us back into the game? Is that what we are? Are we now a defense-oriented team? That's what it looks like. But it's hard to be a defense-oriented team when you let Darren Waller have 12 receptions on 16 targets for 103 yards. How are we a defensive team if that stuff's happening? And something else about the Saints that drives me crazy. The Saints, all you hear all the time is, oh, the Saints get screwed by the refs. Oh, well, this happens. The Saints have the referees. The Saints can't keep having 100-plus yards of penalty yards every game and blame the refs. This game ended on a penalty. A bad penalty. A penalty that probably shouldn't have been called, maybe. But he definitely, the defensive back definitely hooked the arm. I'm not saying that the Saints, all the penalties are real. But I'm so tired of hearing that the Saints get penalized, the Saints get this, the referees are against us, the Saints they get unlucky. Maybe the defensive backs just need to relax. Maybe these defensive players need to quit getting so many damn penalties called against them. So many of these Raiders' points were because the Saints extended their drives with penalties. At some point, it's got to be a player's thing. At some point, it's got to be a coaching thing. I don't get this team. I really don't. Because we're supposed to be this great defense. We're supposed to be this high-powered offense. And we're not either. We're not a great defense. We're not this great offense. 1 week we're seeing Marshawn Lattimore hold Mike Evans to basically no catches. We're seeing the defense hawk all over the place and get turnovers and all this. And then the very next week, they let one player kick their ass. Let me read the targets from the Las Vegas Raiders receiving corps. Darren Waller, 16 targets. The next highest person had 3. 3, 2, 1, 1, 3, 1, 1, 2, 3, 1. Hey, coaching staff, maybe cover Darren Waller. What are we doing? What are we doing? The Saints, I don't want to be a knee-jerk reaction here, but the Saints look so pedestrian, so bad. They are so boring. This team, this isn't even close to a good offense. This isn't even close to a high-powered offense. This isn't even close to an expansive offense. I don't know if it's Brees. I don't know if it's Sean Payton, but this ain't it. If Taysom Hill has to have 5 or 6 passes a game, if he has to have 10 carries and all of a sudden we're doing these weird wildcat things, change the offense. Change something. Make a decision. But I can't sit here and watch for the rest of the season for 15 more weeks. I can't sit here and watch Drew Brees throw crossing routes for 3 hours and miss wide open receivers all over the place. I mean, Derek Carr is awful, and Derek Carr outplayed Drew Brees the entire game. And the only reason that the Saints were 1-1 is because of how bad Tampa was in week 1. I mean, we had multiple turnovers, blocked field goal, Tom Brady was ass, and the Saints win. How in the hell are the Saints supposed to be competitive with Kansas City, Seattle, anybody? Oh, Green Bay, Dallas. How are the Saints supposed to keep up with these teams that can score when we cannot complete passes for more than 10 yards? We cannot. I mean, I watched this game. This was nothing. I would love to see a chart for Drew Brees' completions. I'd be stunned if more than 5 were 10 yards down the field. It was all dump passes, all screens, all crossing routes. And yes, some of them, the players worked. Like Traquan Smith was extending a lot of plays. Kamara was extending a lot of plays. Sure. But what is this? What is this team? I mean, Mike Thomas, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure they missed him a lot. The Saints were up 17 to 7 at one point. You know what I mean? This was the Raiders just blew them out. Once they started going, that was it. And the Saints had no adaptability, no evolution. They couldn't do anything with Waller. They never tried to do anything different on offense. It was awful. I mean, this performance right here is one of the worst performances I've seen from the New Orleans Saints in the last probably 5 years. This was so embarrassing. And now let me slow down here. With that being said, I'm seeing a lot of people on Twitter saying that it's time for Jameis Winston. It's not time for Jameis Winston. You do not sit Drew Brees if he's healthy. Bottom line. Have you seen the movie Titanic? At the very end of Titanic, when the captain goes back into his captain's quarters and he's going down with the ship and the icy waters crush through the windows and he is swept to the bottom, he's swept to the abyss. We are that captain now. We cannot say, all right, yeah, Jameis Winston, get in there, bro. That ain't it. That's not it right now. You do not sit Drew Brees if Drew Brees is healthy. Now, if Drew Brees is not healthy, if Drew Brees comes back from some kind of evaluation and the coaches say, well, look, Drew Brees literally can't throw the ball more than 5 yards, his arm is shot, sure, start Jameis Winston. But it ain't the move right now. So I don't want to hear the knee-jerk reaction is sit Brees. That's not even an option. Okay? Too many people I'm seeing are throwing that around. I'm here to tell you, as much as I'm unhappy with this team, as much as I'm unhappy with this offense, as much as I'm unhappy with Drew Brees, you don't sit him. So if you don't sit him, what's the rest of the season look like? Does Brees heat up? Does Brees get better? Because these first 2 games, he's been total garbage. He's been awful. He can't throw the ball downfield. He's inaccurate. Really bad stuff. And I'll say this. As much as I'm putting this on Drew Brees and Sean Payton, the defense has to get their life together too. I can't stand how much I hear about how great Marshawn Lattimore is, how great Malcolm Jenkins is, and then they get that ass lit up every single week. Marshawn Lattimore has these moments where he's the best cornerback in the game, i.e. last week. And then he has moments like this week where it's like, hey, man, are you even on the field? This team is too inconsistent on defense and too consistently bad on offense to do anything. I guess this is the best team in the NFC South because the NFC South all of a sudden is the worst division in football. The Falcons suck, the Panthers suck, the Bucs suck. So I guess the Saints are going to win the division by default, but that's it. If you think this team is an NFC championship team, if you think this team is a Super Bowl team, after watching the first 2 games, get your ass off Bourbon Street to quit drinking Hurricanes. Put down the drinks because this is not through the first 2 weeks of the season. There is no reason this team can't turn it around. They obviously have the talent. A few years ago, after they got demolished by New England at home, when we had Adrian Peterson, before we kind of moved the team around and started to get Kamara involved and all that, I gave the same speech. So I'm not saying that they can't turn it around. If this team turns it around and Drew Brees stretches out his arm and all of a sudden Drew Brees can throw the football for, 15 yards, maybe this team can make some noise. If the defensive backs quit getting penalties on every single possession, maybe maybe this team can compete. But how the fuck are we supposed to sit here and say, yeah, this team's on par with Seattle? I watched Russell Wilson play, and then the very next night I watched Drew Brees play. They might as well have been in different sports. There is not even a comparison between Russell Wilson and Drew Brees. Drew Brees, look, I'm not going to say that Drew Brees is washed. But these first two games are as bad as Drew Brees has ever looked in his career. So I need to know what's going to happen with this team. If you tell me, I'll give you this. If you tell me that Drew Brees will play exactly like this for the next 15 games, and this is the season, I'd be stunned if the Saints win 9 games. Now, if Drew Brees figures it out, sure. And this ain't just on Drew Brees. Sean Payton. Hey, Sean. Why is Taysom Hill getting 2 carries? How does that make any sense? It's so inconsistent. It drives me crazy as a Saints fan. I have to watch some games where Taysom Hill gets 16 touches, and Taysom Hill's throwing the ball on 3rd down, or Taysom Hill's running the ball on 4th and 2 from the 2. And then a game like this where Brees is obviously struggling, where Brees is obviously bad, where Brees obviously doesn't have it, and all of a sudden Taysom Hill isn't on the field. Taysom Hill gets no targets and 2 carries. Sean, did you not print out the rest of your play sheet? I mean, I really don't get it. What's the difference between this game and every other game with Taysom Hill? Does Sean Payton just wake up and say, all right, this game, we're just not going to use Taysom at all? Sean, you're losing. You're not moving the ball whatsoever. You're not doing anything. Get him involved. Let him throw it. Do whatever you got to do. Do something different. But watching Drew Brees throw 4-yard out routes ain't the move. It's just so mind-numbingly aggravating to watch this team. These are exactly the games that make it hard to be a Saints fan. When you're sitting there and you're like, all right, well, I mean, 17-7, we're looking pretty good. And then the Raiders just beat the brakes off of you for the remaining 2 hours of the game because you can't stop Darren Waller. Why do we have Malcolm Jenkins, Marshawn Lattimore, and Demario Davis? You can't stop one guy. 16 targets. And I'll say this, too, about the Raiders. John Gruden made some really stupid calls in this game. Really stupid calls. The touchdown from Jalen Richard, it's 3rd and 10, and you're on the 20. And he calls a halfback draw that they end up scoring because of the Saints. But what kind of call is that? What kind of call is 3rd and 10 to run the football? Are you that conservative? Are you that scared about throwing the ball that you're running on 3rd and 10 from the 20? And yeah, you score, but how is that the right call? And then at the end of the game, there's a minute left. You're up by 7. Drew Brees hasn't done anything. And now you're asking your kicker to make a career long from 54, or you give the Saints the ball with a minute left for the 50? I mean, John Gruden I think just shit down his leg the whole night. I was so unimpressed with him coaching-wise. I thought he was terrible. I really did. I thought he was awful. I mean, the Saints were so bad that it didn't matter. But, God, Gruden, I know Gruden's an old coach. I know Gruden is certainly not a progressive coach, and he's a guy, he won the Super Bowl in 2003. But if I'm the Raiders, I would not be happy with what I saw from Gruden either. Derek Carr, he heated up a little bit. I thought he was pretty bad at the beginning of the game. He doesn't handle pressure well at all. This team goes as far as Josh Jacobs will take them, I guess. And it's not even like he was great. He averaged 3 yards on the ground. They pounded 27 carries. I think the Raiders are a super boring team as far as like their game plans and how Gruden handles the offense. I think Carr, I think he's okay in spots, but I think his clock is all wrong. I mean, you saw him roll into pressure a few times. He had no idea where the blitz was coming from. He missed a lot of receivers. I'm not sure if he's not making his progressions. I don't think this is a great win for the Raiders. I mean, they're 2-0, and they won by 10 against the Saints team, but I just think they made a lot of mistakes too. It's just the Saints couldn't do anything. The Saints could literally not do anything. And you can't when your quarterback can only make 4-yard passes. I mean, I would love to have the possession. We were down 10, the last possession, and I'm watching Drew Brees just dump the ball off for 3 yards. It's insane. Really bad stuff from the Saints. Really bad stuff. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time. It is time for week 2 of the James Skrmetta Power Rankings. Woo! If you are excited, let me hear you say, "Oh!" Let's go. So what we're seeing on the screen here is my week 1 Power Rankings. Now, this Power Ranking list is incredibly fluid. This Power Ranking list, a team can be kicked off the damn list the next week. This is the most fluid list you will ever see in your entire life. So who gets removed from the list immediately? The Niners get off my list. There were 9 last week. Off. Well, let me go ahead and recap the list, I guess. From last week, we have the Chiefs at 1, Ravens, Seahawks, Saints, Packers, Bills, Cardinals, Rams, Niners, Patriots. The Niners fall. They have to fall. Even though they won, they're missing half their damn team. There's no way that I can keep the Niners up there. I just can't do it. Okay? I think the Niners are a good team. Too many injuries. It is what it is. So let's look at the rest of the list. The Chiefs are 1. Now, I think the Chiefs fall. Partly because they were unimpressive and partly because other teams were more impressive. I think the Chiefs fall all the way to 3. Right now, I think Baltimore is the best team in the league, but I think Seattle is right there. Seattle is either 1 or 1A. I think these two are obviously the best 2 teams in the league, Baltimore and Seattle. I'll say Seattle's 1 because they're undefeated. They were ranked higher than Seattle in week 1. I'm there. But I think these are the 2 clear-cut best teams in the league, Baltimore and Seattle. Now, seeing what Baltimore does on Monday Night Football is going to be a really big deal. They play the Chiefs. That's going to be a tough sled. So Baltimore's got a lot to prove. But I think the way they win, the way they play, love what I'm seeing. Seattle, so impressed with Seattle. So impressed with Russell Wilson. So impressed with his defense. I wouldn't be surprised at all if Seattle wins the Super Bowl this year. I think they are far and away the best team in the NFC. We go to the Chiefs. Chiefs are obviously the Chiefs. They're really, really good. I'm kind of being down on the Chiefs right now because of how good Seattle and Baltimore have been, but I digress. Next up, the Saints at 4. Get the fuck out of here. 4? Get out of my face. We're moving the Saints off the list. They might come back on the list, but right now they're moved off of it. The Packers playing really well. I think the Packers move up. They're playing really good. Rodgers is playing really good. They're playing the Saints this week. Huge game. Huge game for them. So I would not be surprised at all if the Packers jump up because of what they do to the Saints, or they could fall off the list. Who the hell knows? The Bills had a very impressive week. They move up. The Bills are at 5. The Cardinals had a very impressive week. They move up. They're at 6. The Rams had an impressive week. They're at 7. So now we're at 8 is empty, 9 is empty, 10 are the Patriots. The Patriots, even though they lost, I think the Patriots are very impressive. I think that you got to give Patriots some clout here. They went all the way to Seattle, played really strong, played really good football. Cam Newton officially healthy. Cam Newton officially where he needs to be for the Patriots. I think the Patriots only get better. I move them to 9 because, they did lose. Now, who's going to be the 8th team and the 10th team? I think the 8th team is the Steelers. I think the Steelers are an underrated team. I think the Steelers are slept on. They're 2-0. Roethlisberger is Peyton Manning for Denver right now. Let the defense work. Let James Conner work. Get Juju involved. And you're going to be okay. And you're going to be fine. All right, so right now, I'm thinking the Steelers are going to be a threat in the AFC. I think the Steelers, like I said, are being slept on. They're going to probably be a wild card team, and they're not a team you want to play in the playoffs. So as long as Big Ben stays healthy, and as long as he can do enough, I think this defense is good enough. This is a good team. The Patriots, I might think the Patriots are a little bit better, but it's hard for me to take a 2-0 team and put them under the 1-1 team. You know how it is. Now, the 10th team. So it's not the Jets, it's not the Redskins, it's not the Raiders, it's not the Panthers, not the Broncos, not the Eagles, not the Giants, not the Chargers, not the Colts, not the Texans, not the Cowboys, not the Bengals, not the Bears, not the Niners, not the Falcons, not the Bucks, not the Vikings, not the Lions. This team suck. Not the Jaguars, not the Browns, not the Dolphins. It's either the Titans or the Saints. The Titans are 2-0. I cannot put the Saints at 10 after watching what they did. Bottom line, I can't do it. I cannot do it because I know that this team just can't compete playing how they're playing. I can't. They're probably a division winner. They're probably a playoff team. But until I see something from Drew Brees, until I see something from this team, I can't put them in a top 10. I mean, they're going from, what I have at 4? They're going from 4 to off the list. I mean, I am a Saints fan, but there's no way I can possibly be like, this team is a top 10 team in the NFL with the way that Drew Brees is playing, with the way this defense is playing. They've got no positives in right now. 0. They're playing the Packers this week. If the Saints come out strong there, we may be able to see the real Saints stand up. But right now, I've got to put the Titans at 10. Vrabel's a good coach. They're winning games, tight games, whatever. Derrick Henry's doing his damn thing. And Tannehill, hey, maybe Tannehill's good. I've been down on Tannehill. I've said he's been kind of like in a perfect place, right place, right time. Maybe Tannehill's good. It's possible. If Tannehill is good, if Tannehill takes some kind of step, if he's a viable quarterback, the rest of this team is good enough to certainly be a top 10, and they're undefeated right now, so I got to give them some love. So this is officially the Week 2 top 10. Ravens, number 1. Seahawks, number 2. Chiefs, number 3. Green Bay, number 4. Bills, number 5. Cardinals, number 6. Rams, number 7. Steelers, number 8. Patriots, number 9. Titans, number 10. I think right now, if I had to buy stock in any of these 10 teams, I'd probably buy stock in the Seahawks. I love what the Seahawks are doing right now, but I just can't put them ahead of the Ravens because of where they were in Week 1. You understand the list has rules. So that's the power rankings for Week 2, the most important power rankings list you will see. I mean, the rest of these teams really are kind of bad. Let's talk about these teams. So outside of the top 10, which one of these teams have any kind of hope for a Super Bowl or a playoff run? I mean, which ones? The Bears are 2-0. Certainly not them. Bengals aren't ready. Browns aren't ready. Dolphins aren't ready. Jaguars aren't ready. Dallas maybe, but Dallas maybe has the ceiling. Lions don't. Vikings don't. Bucks don't. Falcons don't. Niners are hurt. I mean, they have nothing. Texans obviously don't. Colts or whatever. Chargers or whatever. Giants, Eagles. The rest of these teams, I think, are just bang average. Like, below average or average. Tampa could. Colts could. I just don't see it. I mean, I just don't think Philip Rivers is going to take this Colts team very far. I mean, the way that they're playing right now, I think the Colts were a sleeper, and I said they were going to be a sleeper in the AFC, but unless Rivers picks it up, I mean, the only teams here that I think could are the Saints, Cowboys, Colts, Bucks. That's really it. The rest of them, I think, are pretty much what they are. So that's really the only teams looking at cracking the top 10 here are Saints, Cowboys, Colts, Bucks. The rest of them are just kind of average to below average. And that's including some 2-0 teams. That's including the Raiders. I mean, even though the Raiders got a huge win, I just don't think that there's enough there. I don't think Gruden's good enough of a coach. I don't think Carr's good enough of a quarterback. They're in a really hard division. Like, they can't win the division. So are they a wild card team? Maybe. I don't know. But this is my top 10. So there it is. And we're over the 2-hour mark of the show. Who else can host a 2-hour show like me without commercials, without breaks? God, I'm amazing. We got one more thing to talk about, and then the show will be over. So the NFL hit 3 coaches with fines for not wearing face masks. Those 3 were Kyle Shanahan, Pete Carroll, and Vic Fangio. They fined each coach for $100,000, and they fined their teams $250,000. I think this is weird. I mean, look, I've been big on the masks. I've been big on regulations, but I don't think I understand this one. I really don't. First of all, they're outside. Second of all, as far as I know, everyone is tested. So if we are to believe that every single person on that sideline was tested and every single person was negative, then why should the coaches have to wear masks? I mean, why aren't the players wearing the masks? I don't understand why I do understand the NFL is trying to do the visibility thing. Like, this is the ultimate virtue signaling. The NFL is saying, look at us, we're wearing the mask, we're doing this. I get that. But coming down this hard on these coaches, I just don't know if I understand it. I mean, the coaches, like, you can do other stuff. Can't you put the coaches in like a designated area where no one else can get within 6 feet of them? And they can just call the plays or whatever? I mean, I don't see the necessary reason for the coaches having to wear the masks the whole game. The players are on the sidelines. The players are not wearing masks. I don't see how the NFL can be like, we're going to find the players for not, or we're going to find the coaches for not wearing their masks, but we're also allowing 95% of the other people on the field to not wear the masks. It just doesn't make any sense to me. And the whole idea of the testing. If you told me that I was in a house with 50 people who were just tested and all 50 people were negative, I wouldn't do anything. I wouldn't even wear a mask because I would know, well, none of these people have COVID. They were tested. So either the NFL is lying about these tests and they just have no clue. So they're trying to, keep the coaches or whatever, just trying to keep the people safe. But then it's like, why are they announcing the testing results? I guess they have to for visibility, but I just don't understand why they're coming down so hard. It doesn't. It just seems like the NFL does this. Like we've talked about the NFL having a really hard time with rules and punishments, and going back to domestic violence and going back to marijuana. Like, some players will get an 8-game suspension for marijuana, but they'll get a 2-game suspension for beating their wife, like Floyd Mayweather beat up Conor McGregor. So I think this is a bad look for the NFL because it is more, to me, of forcing these coaches to play along with or placate this idea that the NFL is like just this moral high ground, and the NFL is doing all this stuff to protect the players and the coaches, but really they're not. And really they're just showing. It's like a farce. It's an obvious farce. It's an obvious thing. The NFL just wants you to believe it versus what it actually does. I mean, maybe I'm way off on this, but combined with the testing, combined with being outside, combined with the whole setup, I think this is wildly unfair. And you can tell by these punishments. I mean, these punishments are so beyond the pale. $100,000? $250,000 for the team? I think they said the overall fines are now over like $1 million in the first week or whatever. And it's going to be even worse because Sean Payton wasn't wearing his mask and John Gruden wasn't wearing his mask. And the coaches are allowed to pull the mask down when they're calling the plays. And then they got to pick the mask back up. But what the hell does that do? Who is the NFL actually protecting here? I think the NFL is protecting the NFL. Like, I think the NFL is protecting the image of the NFL versus these players being protected, versus these coaches being protected. It's just like the jersey swap thing. The NFL allows these players to tackle each other, pull on each other's jerseys, bleed, spit, sweat for 3 hours at a pop, but they won't allow the players to swap jerseys after the game. Even though we know that COVID is not transmitted from like surfaces. So it's just another thing where the NFL is so obviously making rules just for public perception, and they're not making rules at all for actual safety or at all for actual protection. And it's embarrassing. I think a lot of the mask stuff is like that anyways. I mean, like why the hell is reporters on the sidelines who are standing by themselves, why are they wearing a mask? I don't get it. And as someone who has wore a mask, and as someone who has begged people to wear a mask, and as people who make fun of anti-maskers literally every single day, I think every podcast we do, we're making fun of an anti-masker. As someone who does that, I do think that it's more important to be doing actual procedure, actual regulations, actual protection than worrying about your perception. The mask is not a tool for perception. The mask should be a tool for protection. And the NFL now coming down this hard on these coaches and stuff, to me, it just takes It takes all the good out of wearing a mask or all the good out of these procedures. It takes it all out. And it just makes it a show. And I think it's so embarrassing. I heard somebody who was like, well, Pete Carroll's 70 years old. He should be wearing a mask for his own personal protection. And it's like, dude, what are you talking about? What the hell are you talking about? He's outside. He's been tested. His team has been tested. His coaches have been tested. But what is he protecting himself from? I mean, how are we living in a place where there are cities and states or whatever where there is no regulation for outside events of less than however many people, and then these guys are in an empty-ass stadium with a sideline full of people who get tested every week, probably almost every day, and they're forcing these guys to wear a mask? I just don't get it. I think it's a bad look for the NFL. I don't agree with it. Woo! Good Lord have mercy. That is going to be the NFL show, ladies and gentlemen, on a Tuesday here. What a freaking show. Well over 2 hours of NFL recap talk. I really am just the best in the world. I mean, I said this last week. Bottom line, guys, there is no one on earth. There is no one on earth that can do this. I mean, people have 3-hour radio shows. You know, Colin Cowherd, whoever. They have 3-hour radio shows, but they've got co-hosts. They've got commercials. They've got breaks. They've got writers. We don't even have a script. This is everything that we have you see on screen. We're just going from the box scores. We're going from news articles. And I'm just riffing for 2+ hours, reading chat, breaking down these games, talking about the mask, doing a power rankings list on the fly. I mean, look, we got something special here. Bottom line. We got something special here. You're not going to find anything better. Sports radio, whatever you want to talk about. You're not going to find it better than right here. I hate to be cocky. I hate to be egotistical. But that's the truth. So thank y'all for being a part of this. I mean, y'all, the chat is the best part. I love doing this show live because I love to get involved with the chat. And hopefully as this show progresses, this is the 3rd episode. As this show progresses, hopefully more people who listen to the program. We had, I think, like 15 listeners on the podcast last week. And that's not counting YouTube. So you're talking about 20, probably 25, 30 listeners. If you think about 20, 25, 30 listeners, if they all got into chat and we were breaking down questions and having a conversation, that's what the ceiling of this show is. The ceiling of the show is like a live radio call-in show for multiple hours talking about the NFL. Friday, I can't decide if I'm going to do the show Thursday or Friday. I'm leaning towards Fridays, but that means we missed Thursday Night Football. So I'm still deciding. But Thursday or Friday, we will do this exact same thing, but previewing the games, previewing the lines, making our picks, making our bets, all that stuff. Oh, I forgot to talk about my bets. We went, I think, 2-3 this week, or 3-4. We lost one more than we won because of Tennessee. Tennessee was a loser. Dallas was a loser. The Jets were a loser. I think that might have been it. I think that might have been all the losers. So I think we went 2-3. Dallas was a good bet. We just got cucked with all the fumbles. It is what it is. You don't fumble 4 times, miss 2 fake punts, you don't cover. Tennessee was looking good all game, and then Minshew just came back, which is kind of surprising as Tennessee is kind of built to keep separation with how much they run the football and all that, but it is what it is. Dallas was really the swing bet, but, we're fine. I had a couple prop bets last night. I had Darren Waller's over receptions. I had Alvin Kamara's over receptions, so made a little bit back last week. So this week was pretty much a wash. So we're probably somewhere around even or plus like $50 to $100. So we're okay. We're okay on the year. So we're looking good. But Friday we'll pick all the games again. I'll give you some of my plays. We'll talk about the games, preview the games, all that fun stuff. So thank you for hanging out with me today. This has been the James Skrmetta Football Show. I appreciate that very much.